Speaking of the compositions once again, Drupad, as I said, was very, very popular in the 15th century. But in a couple of centuries later, we will see another form, a very revolutionary composition form, and that is the khayal gayaki. The khayal form saw its existence somewhere in the Drupad form, and they say that since Drupad had become highly rigid and stiff, there was something more flexible and more creative that was required so far as the compositions were concerned, and khayal was this new discovery. So khayal, as the name suggests, is highly imaginative. Khayal is an Urdu word which means thought. So basically khayal was nothing but an imagination of a particular singer. In khayal gayaki, the singer is not just a singer but also a composer, and the entire singing weaves around improvisations that are spontaneous. And this was a very new and revolutionary style which took its time to get accepted by all the musical class, but as it got its acceptance, it became very popular. So about 19th, 20th century, khayal singing was a very popular style which most of the singers were practicing. This style was a very unique combination of the nibaddh and the anibaddh style that I had just mentioned earlier. It had a huge content of anibaddh singing, of flexible singing inside the nibaddh form. So for example, I just say one line and then I can keep innovating that line in many ways. Let me just elaborate this. This is a very popular khayal bandish of Rag Yaman. Now I can say this in many ways. Sakhi piya bin, sakhi piya bin, sakhi ali piya bin. So you see, just this one line, and we can keep on going, improvising it as much as we want. This was the uniqueness and the beauty of khayal gayaki. It took some time for khayal to get settled, but then when it came, it just changed the way music was perceived and rendered. And suddenly, it became much more challenging for singers to sing khayal, as they had to develop this very unique method of improvising and singing at that point of time. This again is a very unique style which cannot be seen anywhere else in any other form. The khayal gayaki is indeed a very unique style of rendition, not just because of its high creative elements, but also for the fact that it has a range of tempos to be showcased. And we can start rendering a khayal at a very slow tempo and move on to faster tempos, going through medium and then fast. So the slow tempo, which is known as vilambit in Hindustani classical music, medium, which is madhya, and fast, which is drut. Khayal gayaki can be showcased in all these three tempos. This is also quite unique in khayal, because in other forms we generally see a medium paced or madhya lay or middle range tempo, which is generally exhibited. But khayal is special in this sense as well. So the slow part of the khayal, which is sung at a very vilambit lay, is known as the bada khayal, and the faster part is known as the chota khayal. There are two parts in the khayal gayaki. This is a very pure classical composition format that I have just explained. Apart from that, there is a lovely set of other compositions as well that come under the semi-classical genre. Semi-classical genre developed in the central parts of India, which was highly influenced by the regional music. And the ladies, the courtesan singers that were singing for their nawabs and for their kings and for their guests would present these semi-classical genres, out of which 2-3 composition formats are very popular. Thumri is one of them, Dadra, Tappa. These are the formats of semi-classical genre that were quite popular, and they came about in the 19th, 20th century. One of the Nawabs, Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, gave huge patronage to Thumris. Thumris were songs which actually were songs that were sung along with the dancers, and slowly the dance went away and just the singing was remaining. And these songs were very highly Shringar Ras based. The rags that were used for these songs were also slightly more porous than the other rags that were being used for the khayal gayaki. And these forms were basically more for entertainment rather than keeping a very pure rendition line. Therefore, you can call Thumris to be in between light music and pure classical format, hence semi-classical. We can now move on to the third branch of rendition. After the pure classical, the semi-classical, now we move on to light classical or light music, which is basically the songs, the bhajans, qawwalis, ghazals, all these composition formats that come under this section. Of course, nobody needs any introduction for songs, as we are all very familiar with this composition format because they are all around us in the present times in the form of film songs, and that's the most popular genre that we witness in the current music system. This happened around 100 years back when the films were being created in India. Of course, they were silent films initially, but later on there was music and sound also which had been introduced in the films. With this came playback singing, which became a very popular line of rendition so far as the singers is concerned, and we've had beautiful singers who have done playback singing these songs. We have a huge collection of songs. We have innumerable songs ever since these films were made. Other forms that are very popular in light music are ghazals. They are Urdu poetry basically, which has been tuned and sung. Then there are bhajans, that is Hindi or Hindu devotional music. There are qawwalis, that are Islamic devotional music. These are also very popular light music forms. The fourth section that is also important is the folk music section, which has been an inspiration to all these three sections: the pure classical, the semi-classical, and the light classical or the light form. Of course, the folk system has got various forms of compositions like the Rabindra Sangeet, Sabad, Kirtan, Lavani, Kajri, Chaiti, all these forms, and you find a reflection of these forms in all the other composition formats that we have in our Indian music system. This was a little bit about compositions. So let me just in a gist tell you that there are 4 sects of compositions. The first being pure classical, second being semi-classical, light and folk.